Text 16. Your lordship is the prime root of the tree of the planetary systems. This tree has grown by first penetrating the material nature in three trunks, as me, Shiva, and you, the Almighty, for creation, maintenance, and dissolution. And we three have grown with many branches. Therefore I offer my obeisances unto you, the tree of the cosmic manifestation. Purport. The cosmic manifestation is grossly divided into three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems, and then it broadens into the cosmos of 14 planetary systems, with the manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the supreme root. Material nature, which appears to be the cause of the cosmic manifestation, is only the agency or energy of the Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Mayadhyakshana prakriti suyate sacharacharam. Only under the superintendence of the Supreme Lord does material nature appear to be the cause of all creation, maintenance, and dissolution. The Lord expands himself into three, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, for maintenance, creation, and destruction respectively. Of the three principal agents controlling the three modes of material nature, Vishnu is the Almighty. Even though he is within material nature for the purpose of maintenance, he is not controlled by the laws of material nature. The other two, Brahma and Shiva, although almost as greatly powerful as Vishnu, are within the control of the material energy of the Supreme Lord. The conception of many gods controlling the many departments of material nature is ill-conceived of by the foolish pantheist. God is one without a second, and he is the primal cause of all causes. As there are many departmental heads of governmental affairs, so there are many heads of management of the universal affairs. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, the impersonalist does not believe in the personal management of things as they are. But in this verse it is clearly explained that everything is personal and nothing is impersonal. We have already discussed this point in the introduction, and it is confirmed here in this verse. The tree of the material manifestation is described in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an Asvatha tree, whose root is upward. We have actual experience of such a tree when we see the shadow of a tree on the bank of a reservoir of water. The reflection of the tree on the water appears to hang down from its upward roots. The tree of creation described here is only a shadow of the reality which is Parabrahman, Vishnu. In the internal potential manifestation of the Vaikuntha Lokas, the actual tree exists, and the tree reflected in the material nature is only the shadow of this actual tree. The impersonalist's theory that Brahman is void of all variegatedness is false, because the shadow tree described in Bhagavad Gita cannot exist without being the reflection of a real tree. The real tree is situated in the eternal existence of spiritual nature, full of transcendental varieties, and Lord Vishnu is the root of that tree also. The root is the same, the Lord, both for the real tree and the false, but the false tree is only the perverted reflection of the real tree. The Lord, being the real tree, is here offered obeisances by Brahma on his own behalf and also on behalf of Lord Shiva. Text 17. People in general all engage in foolish acts, not in the really beneficial activities enunciated directly by you for their guidance. As long as their tendency for foolish work remains powerful, all their plans in the struggle for existence will be cut to pieces. I therefore offer my obeisances unto him who acts as eternal time. Purport. People in general are all engaged in senseless work. They are systematically unmindful of the great beneficial work, which is the devotional service of the Lord, technically called the Archana regulations. The Archana regulations are directly instructed by the Lord in the Narada Pancharatra and are strictly followed by the intelligent men, who know well that the highest perfectional goal of life is to reach Lord Vishnu, who is the root of the tree called the cosmic manifestation. Also, in the Bhagavatam and in Bhagavad Gita, such regulative activities are clearly mentioned. Foolish people do not know that their self-interest is in realization of Vishnu. The Bhagavatam 7:5-30-32 says, persons who are determined to totally rot in false material happiness cannot become Krishna-minded, either by instructions from teachers, by self-realization, or by parliamentary discussions. They are dragged by the unbridled senses into the darkest region of ignorance, and thus they madly engage in what is called chewing the chewed. Because of their foolish activities, they are unaware that the ultimate goal of human life is to achieve Vishnu, the Lord of the cosmic manifestation, and so their struggle for existence is in the wrong direction of material civilization, which is under the external energy. They are led by similar foolish persons, just as one blind man is led by another blind man, and both fall in the ditch. Such foolish men cannot be attracted towards the activities of the Supreme Powerful, who is actually the neutralizing measure for their foolish activities, unless and until they have the good sense to be guided by the great souls, who are completely freed from material attachment. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord asks everyone to give up all other occupational duties and absolutely engage in archana activities, or in pleasing the Lord. But almost no one is attracted to such archana activity. Everyone is more or less attracted by activities which are conditions of rebellion against the Supreme Lord. The systems of jnana and yoga are also indirectly rebellious acts against the Lord. There is no auspicious activity except archana of the Lord. Jnana and yoga are sometimes accepted within the purview of archana when the ultimate aim is Vishnu and not otherwise. The conclusion is that only the devotees of the Lord are bona fide human beings eligible for salvation. Others are vainly struggling for existence without any actual benefit. Text 18. Your Lordship, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you who are indefatigable time and the enjoyer of all sacrifices. Although I am situated in an abode which will continue to exist for a time duration of 2 parardas, although I am the leader of all other planets in the universe, and although I have undergone many years of penance for self-realization, still I offer my respects unto you. Purport. Brahma is the greatest personality in the universe because he has the longest duration of life. He is the most respectable personality because of his penance, influence, prestige, etc., and still he has to offer his respectful obeisances unto the Lord. Therefore, it is incumbent upon all others who are far below the standard of Brahma to do as he did and offer respects as a matter of duty. Text 19. O my Lord, by your own will you appear in the various species of living entities, among animals lower than human beings, as well as among the demigods, to perform your transcendental pastimes. You are not affected by material contamination. You come just to fulfill the obligations of your own principles of religion, and therefore, O Supreme Personality, I offer my obeisances unto you for manifesting such different forms. Purport. The Lord's incarnations in different species of life are all transcendental. He appears as a human being in his incarnations of Krishna, Ram, etc., but he is not a human being. Anyone who mistakes him for an ordinary human being is certainly not very intelligent, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Avajanante mam muddha manushim hanum asritam. The same principle is applicable when he appears as the hog or fish incarnation. They are transcendental forms of the Lord and are manifested under certain necessities of his own pleasure and pastimes. Such manifestations of the transcendental forms of the Lord are accepted by him mostly to enliven his devotees. All his incarnations are manifested whenever there is a need to deliver his devotees and maintain his own principles. Text 20. My Lord, you accept the pleasure of sleeping in the water of devastation where there are violent waves, and you enjoy pleasure on the bed of snakes, showing the happiness of your sleep to intelligent persons. At that time, all the universal planets are stationed within your abdomen. Purport. Persons who cannot think of anything beyond the limit of their own power are like frogs in a well who cannot imagine the length and breadth of the great Pacific Ocean. Such people take it as legendary when they hear that the Supreme Lord is lying on his bed within the great ocean of the universe. They are surprised that one can lie down within water and sleep very happily, but a little intelligence can mitigate this foolish astonishment. There are many living entities within the bed of the ocean who also enjoy the material bodily activities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. If such insignificant living entities can enjoy life within the water, why can't the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, sleep on the cool body of a serpent and enjoy in the turmoil of violent ocean waves? The distinction of the Lord is that his activities are all transcendental, and he is able to do anything and everything without being deterred by limitations of time and space. He can enjoy his transcendental happiness regardless of material considerations. Text 21. O object of my worship, I am born from the house of your lotus navel for the purpose of creating the universe by your mercy. All these planets of the universe were stationed within your transcendental abdomen while you were enjoying sleep. Now, your sleep having ended, your eyes are open like blossoming lotuses in the morning. Purport. Brahma is teaching us the beginning of our jhana regulations from morning, 4 o'clock, to night, 10 o'clock. Early in the morning, the devotee has to rise from his bed and pray to the Lord, and there are other regulative principles for offering Mangala Arati early in the morning. Foolish non-devotees, not understanding the importance of our jhana, criticize the regulative principles, but they have no eyes to see that the Lord also sleeps by his own will. The impersonal conception of the Supreme is so detrimental to the path of devotional service that it is very difficult to associate with the stubborn non-devotees who always think in terms of material conceptions. Impersonalists always think backwards. They think that because there is form and matter, spirit should be formless. Because in matter there is sleep, in spirit there cannot be sleep. And because the sleeping of the deity is accepted in Archana worship, the Archana is Maya. All these thoughts are basically material. To think either positively or negatively is still thinking materially. Knowledge accepted from the superior source of the Vedas is standard. Here in these verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that Archana is recommended. Before Brahma took up the task of creation, he found the Lord sleeping on the serpent bed in the waves of the water of devastation. Therefore, sleeping exists in the internal potency of the Lord, and this is not denied by pure devotees of the Lord like Brahma and his disciplic succession. It is clearly said here that the Lord slept very happily within the violent waves of the water, manifesting thereby that he is able to do anything and everything by his transcendental will, and not be hampered by any circumstances. The Mayavadi cannot think beyond this material experience, and thus he denies the Lord's ability to sleep within the water. His mistake is that he compares the Lord to himself, and that comparison is also a material thought. The whole philosophy of the Mayavada school, based on not this, not that, neti, is basically material. Such thought cannot give one the chance to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is. Text 22. Let the Supreme Lord be merciful towards me. He is the one friend and soul of all living entities in the world, and he maintains all for their ultimate happiness by his 6 transcendental opulences. May he be merciful towards me, so that I, as before, may be empowered with the introspection to create, for I am also one of the surrendered souls who are dear to the Lord. Purport. The Supreme Lord, Purushottama, or Sri Krishna, is the maintainer of all, in both the transcendental and material worlds. He is the life and friend of all because there is eternally natural affection and love between the living entities and the Lord. He is the one friend and well-wisher for all, and he is one without a second. The Lord maintains all the living entities everywhere by his 6 transcendental opulences, for which he is known as Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma prayed for his mercy so that he might be able to create the universal affairs as he did before. Only by the Lord's causeless mercy could he create both material and spiritual personalities like Marichi and Narada respectively. Brahma prayed to the Lord because he is very much dear to the surrendered soul. The surrendered soul knows nothing but the Lord, and therefore the Lord is very affectionate towards him. Text 23. The Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, is always the benefactor of the surrendered souls. His activities are always enacted through his internal potency, Ram, or the goddess of fortune. I pray only to engage in his service and the creation of the material world, and I pray that I not be materially affected by my works, for thus I may be able to give up the false prestige of being the creator. Purport. In the matter of material creation, maintenance, and destruction, there are 3 incarnations of the material modes of nature, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshvara. But the Lord's incarnation as Vishnu, in his internal potency, is the supreme energy for the total activities. Brahma, who was only an assistant in the modes of creation, wanted to remain in his actual position as an instrument of the Lord, instead of becoming puffed up by the false prestige of thinking himself the creator. That is the way of becoming dear to the Supreme Lord, and receiving his benediction. Foolish men want to take credit for all creations made by them, but intelligent persons know very well that not a blade of grass can move without the will of the Lord. Thus all the credit for wonderful creations must go to him. By spiritual consciousness only can one be free from the contamination of material affection and receive the benedictions offered by the Lord. Text 24. The Lord's potencies are innumerable. As he lies down in the water of devastation, I am born as the total universal energy from the navel lake in which the lotus sprouts. I am now engaged in manifesting his diverse energies in the form of the cosmic manifestation. I therefore pray that in the course of my material activities, I may not be deviated from the vibration of the Vedic hymns. Purport. Every person engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord in this material world is prone to so many material activities, as if one is not strong enough to protect himself against the onslaught of material affection, he may be diverted from the spiritual energy. In the material creation, Brahma has to create all kinds of living entities with bodies suitable to their material conditions. Brahma wants to be protected by the Lord because he has to contact many vicious living entities. An ordinary Brahmana may fall from the Brahma Tejas, or the power of Brahminical excellence, due to his association with many fallen conditioned souls. Brahma, as the supermost Brahmana, is afraid of such a fall down, and therefore he prays to the Lord for protection. This is a warning for one and all in the spiritual advancement of life. Unless one is sufficiently protected by the Lord, he may fall down from his spiritual position. Therefore one has to pray constantly to the Lord for protection and the blessing to carry out one's duty. Lord Chaitanya also entrusted his missionary work to his devotees and assured them of his protection against the onslaught of material affection. The path of spiritual life is stated in the Vedas to be like the edge of a sharpened razor. A little inattentiveness may at once create havoc and bloodshed. But one who is a completely surrendered soul, always seeking protection from the Lord in the discharge of his entrusted duties, has no fear of falling into material contamination. Text 25. The Lord, who is supreme and is the oldest of all, is unlimitedly merciful. I wish that he may smilingly bestow his benediction upon me by opening his lotus eyes. He can uplift the entire cosmic creation and remove our dejection by kindly speaking his directions. Purport. The Lord is ever increasingly merciful upon the fallen souls of this material world. The whole cosmic manifestation is a chance for all to improve themselves in devotional service to the Lord, and everyone is meant for that purpose. The Lord expands himself into many personalities who are either self-expansions or separated expansions. The personalities of the individual souls are his separated expansions, whereas the self-expansions are the Lord himself. The self-expansions are predominators, and the separated expansions are predominated for reciprocation of transcendental bliss with the supreme form of bliss and knowledge. The liberated souls can join in this blissful reciprocation of predominator and predominated without materially concocted ideas. The typical example of such a transcendental exchange between the predominator and the predominated is the Lord's Rasa Leela with the gopis. The gopis are predominated expansions of the internal potency, and therefore the Lord's participation in the Rasa Leela dance is never to be considered like the mundane relationship of man and woman. It is rather the highest perfection stage of the exchange of feelings between the Lord and the living entities. The Lord gives the fallen souls the chance for his highest perfection of life. Lord Brahma is entrusted with the management of the complete cosmic show, and therefore he prays that the Lord bestow his blessings upon him so that he may execute its purpose. Text 26. The sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, after observing the source of his appearance, namely the personality of Godhead, Brahma prayed for his mercy as far as his mind and words would permit him. Thus having prayed, he became silent, as if tired from his activities of penance, knowledge, and mental concentration. Purport. Brahma's enlightenment and knowledge was due to the Lord sitting within his heart. After being created, Brahma could not ascertain the source of his appearance, but after penance and mental concentration, he could see the source of his birth, and thus he became enlightened through his heart. The spiritual master outside and the spiritual master within are both representations of the Lord. Unless one has contact with such bona fide representations, one cannot claim to be a spiritual master. Lord Brahma had no opportunity to take the help of a spiritual master from outside, because at that time Brahma himself was the only creature in the universe. Therefore, on becoming satisfied by the prayers of Brahma, the Lord enlightened him about everything from within. Text 27 through 28. The Lord saw that Brahma was very anxious about the planning and construction of the different planetary systems, and was depressed upon seeing the devastating water. He could understand the intention of Brahma, and thus he spoke in deep, thoughtful words, removing all the illusion that had arisen. Purport. The devastating water was so fearful that even Brahma was perturbed at its appearance, and became very anxious about how to situate the different planetary systems in outer space to accommodate the different kinds of living entities, such as the human beings, those lower than the human beings, and the superhuman beings. All the planets in the universe are situated according to the different grades of living entities under the influence of the modes of material nature. There are 3 modes of material nature, and when they are mixed with one another they become 9. When the 9 are mixed, they become 81, and the 81 also become mixed, and thus we ultimately do not know how the delusion increases and increases. Lord Brahma had to accommodate different places and situations for the requisite bodies of the conditioned souls. The task was meant only for Brahma, and no one in the universe can even understand how difficult it was. But by the grace of the Lord, Brahma was able to execute the tremendous task so perfectly that everyone is amazed to see the workmanship in the Vedanta or the regulator. Text 29. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then said, O Brahma, O depth of Vedic wisdom, be neither depressed nor anxious about the execution of creation. What you are begging from me has already been granted before. Purport. Any person authorized by either the Lord or his bona fide representative is already blessed, as is the work entrusted to him. Of course, the person entrusted with such a responsibility should always be aware of his incapability, and must always look for the mercy of the Lord for the successful execution of his duty. One should not be puffed up because he is entrusted with certain executive work. Fortunate is he who is so entrusted, and if he is always fixed in the sense of being subordinate to the will of the Supreme, he is sure to come out successful in the discharge of his work. Arjuna was entrusted with the work of fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and before he was so entrusted, the Lord had already arranged for his victory. But Arjuna was always conscious of his position as subordinate to the Lord, and thus he accepted him as the supreme guide in his responsibility. Anyone who takes pride in doing responsible work, but does not give credit to the Supreme Lord, is certainly falsely proud, and cannot execute anything nicely. Brahma, and persons in the line of his disciplic succession, who follow in his footsteps, are always successful in the discharge of loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord. Text 30. O Brahma, situate yourself in penance and meditation, and follow the principles of knowledge to receive my favor. By these actions you will be able to understand everything from within your heart. Purport. The mercy of the Lord bestows upon a particular person engaged in executing the responsible work entrusted unto him is beyond imagination, but his mercy is received due to our penance and perseverance in executing devotional service. Brahma was entrusted with the work of creating the planetary systems. The Lord instructed him that when he meditated, he would very easily know where and how the planetary systems must be arranged. The directions were to come from within, and there was no necessity for anxiety in that task. Such instructions of Buddha Yoga are directly imparted by the Lord from within, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Text 31. O Brahma, when you are absorbed in devotional service, in the course of your creative activities, you will see me in you, and throughout the universe, and you will see that you yourself, the universe, and the living entities are all in me. Purport. It is cited herein by the Lord that during his daytime, Brahma would see him as Lord Sri Krishna. He would appreciate how the Lord expanded himself into all the calves during his childhood at Vrindavana. He would know how Yasodamai saw all the universes and planetary systems within the mouth of Krishna during his playful childhood pastimes, and he would also see that there are many millions of Brahmas during the appearance of Lord Krishna in Brahma's daytime. But all these manifestations of the Lord, appearing everywhere in his eternal transcendental forms, cannot be understood by anyone but the pure devotees, who are always engaged in devotional service to the Lord and are fully absorbed in the Lord. The high qualifications of Brahma are also indicated herein. Text 32. You will see me in all living entities, as well as all over the universe, just as fire is situated in wood. Only in that state of transcendental vision will you be able to be free from all kinds of illusion. Purport. Brahma prayed that he might not forget his eternal relationship with the Lord during the course of his material activities. In answer to that prayer, the Lord said that he should not think of existing without a relationship with his omnipotency. The example is given of the fire in wood. The fire kindled in wood is always the same, although the wood may be of different types. Similarly, the bodies within the material creation may be specifically different according to the shape and quality, but the spirit souls within them are not different from one another. The quality of fire, warmth, is the same everywhere, and the spiritual spark, or part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit, is the same in every living being. Thus the potency of the Lord is distributed all over his creation. This transcendental knowledge alone can save one from the contamination of material illusion. Since the Lord's potency is distributed everywhere, a pure soul or devotee of the Lord can see everything in relationship with the Lord, and therefore he has no affection for the outer coverings. That pure spiritual conception makes him immune to all contamination and material association. The pure devotee never forgets the touch of the Lord in all circumstances. Text 33. When you are free from the conception of gross and subtle bodies, and when your senses are free from all influences of the modes of material nature, you will realize your pure form in my association. At that time you will be situated in pure consciousness. Purport. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that a person whose only desire is to render transcendental loving service to the Lord is a free person in any condition of material existence. That service attitude is the Svarupa, or real form of the living entity. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also confirms this statement by declaring that the real spiritual form of the living entity is eternal servitorship to the Supreme Lord. The Mayavada school shudders at the thought of a service attitude in the living entity, not knowing that in the transcendental world, the service of the Lord is based on transcendental love. Transcendental loving service is never to be compared to the forced service of the material world. In the material world, even if one is under the conception that he is no one's servant, he is still the servant of his senses, under the dictation of the material modes. Factually, no one is master here in the material world, and therefore the servants of the senses have a very bad experience of servitude. They shudder at the thought of service because they have no knowledge of the transcendental position. In transcendental loving service, the servitor is as free as the Lord. The Lord is Svarat, or fully independent, and the servant is also fully independent, or Svarat. In the spiritual atmosphere, because there is no forced service, there the transcendental loving service is due to spontaneous love. A reflected glimpse of such service is experienced in the service of the mother unto the son, the friend's service unto the friend, or the wife's service unto the husband. These reflections of service by friends, parents, or wives are not forced, but are due only to love. Here in this material world, however, the loving service is only a reflection. The real service, or service in Svarupa, is present in the transcendental world, in association with the Lord. The very same service in transcendental love can be practiced in devotion here. This verse is also applicable to the Jnani school. The enlightened Jnani, when free from all material contaminations, namely the gross and subtle bodies, together with the senses of the material modes of nature, is placed in the Supreme, and is thus liberated from material bondage. The Jnanis and the devotees are actually in agreement up to the point of liberation from material contamination. But whereas the Jnanis remain pacified on the platform of simple understanding, the devotees develop further spiritual advancement in loving service. The devotees develop a spiritual individuality in their spontaneous service attitude, which is enhanced on and on, up to the point of Madhurya Rasa, or transcendental loving service, reciprocated between the lover and the beloved. Text 34. Since you have desired to increase the population innumerably and expand your varieties of service, you shall never be deprived in this matter, because my causeless mercy upon you will always increase for all time. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord, being cognizant of the facts of the particular time, object, and circumstances, always desires to expand the number of devotees of the Lord in various ways. Such expansions of transcendental service may appear to be material to the materialist, but factually they are expansions of the causeless mercy of the Lord towards the devotee. Plans for such activities may appear to be material activities, but they are different in potency, being engaged in the satisfaction of the transcendental senses of the Supreme. Text 35. You are the original Rishi, and because your mind is always fixed on me, even though you will be engaged in generating various progeny, the vicious mode of passion will never encroach upon you. Purport. The same assurance is given to Brahma in the second Canto, chapter 9, verse 36. Being so favored by the Lord, Brahma's schemes and plans are all infallible. If sometimes Brahma is seen to be bewildered, as in the 10th Canto, he is bewildered by seeing the action of the internal potency. That is also for his further advancement in transcendental service. Arjuna is found to be similarly bewildered. All such bewilderment of the pure devotees of the Lord is specifically meant for their further advancement in knowledge of the Lord. Text 36. Although I am not easily knowable by the conditioned soul, you have known me today because you know that my personality is not constituted of anything material, and specifically not of the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. Purport. Knowledge of the Supreme Absolute Truth does not necessitate negation of the material manifestation, but understanding of spiritual existence as it is. To think that because material existence is realized in forms, therefore spiritual existence must be formless, is only a negative material conception of spirit. The real spiritual conception is that spiritual form is not material form. Brahma appreciated the eternal form of the Lord in that way, and the personality of Godhead approved of Brahma's spiritual conception. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord condemned the material conception of Krishna's body, which arises because he is apparently present like a man. But the Lord may appear in any of his many spiritual forms, but he is not materially composed, nor has he any difference between body and self. That is the way of conceiving the spiritual form of the Lord. Text 37. When you were contemplating whether there was a source to the stem of the lotus of your birth, and you even entered into that stem, you could not trace out anything, but at that time I manifested my form from within. Purport. The personality of Godhead can be experienced only by his causeless mercy, not by mental speculation or with the help of the material senses. Material senses cannot approach the transcendental understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can be appreciated only by submissive devotional service when he reveals himself before the devotee. Only by love of Godhead can one know God, and not otherwise. The personality of Godhead cannot be seen with the material eyes, but he can be seen from within by spiritual eyes opened by the ointment of love of Godhead. As long as one's spiritual eyes are closed due to the dirty covering of matter, one cannot see the Lord. But when the dirt is removed by the process of devotional service, one can see the Lord without a doubt. Brahma's personal endeavor to see the root of the lotus pipe failed, but when the Lord was satisfied by his penance and devotion, he revealed himself from within with no external endeavor. Text 38. O Brahma, the prayers that you have chanted praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penances you have undertaken to understand me, and your firm faith in me, all these are to be considered my causeless mercy. Purport. When a living entity desires to serve the Lord in transcendental loving service, the Lord helps the devotee in so many ways as the Chaitya Guru, or the spiritual master within, and thus the devotee can perform many wonderful activities beyond material estimation. By the mercy of the Lord, even a layman can compose prayers of the highest spiritual perfection. Such spiritual perfection is not limited by material qualifications, but is developed by dint of one's sincere endeavor to render transcendental service. Voluntary endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. Material acquisitions of wealth or education are not considered. Text 39. I am very much pleased by your description of me in terms of my transcendental qualities, which appear mundane to the mundaners. I grant you all benedictions in your desire to glorify all the planets by your activities. Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord like Brahma and those in his line of disciplic succession always desire that the Lord be known all over the universe by each and every one of the living entities. That desire of the devotee is always blessed by the Lord. The impersonalist sometimes prays for the mercy of the personality of Godhead Narayana as the embodiment of material goodness, but such prayers do not satisfy the Lord because he is not thereby glorified in terms of his actual transcendental qualities. The pure devotees of the Lord are always most dear to him, although he is always kind and merciful to all living entities. Here the word gunamayam is significant because it indicates the Lord's possessing transcendental qualities. Text 40. Any human being who prays like Brahma and who thus worships me shall very soon be blessed with the fulfillment of all his desires, for I am the Lord of all benediction. Purport. The prayers offered by Brahma cannot be chanted by anyone who desires to fulfill his own sense gratification. Such prayers can be selected only by a person who wants to satisfy the Lord in his service. The Lord certainly fulfills all desires in regard to transcendental loving service, but he cannot fulfill the whims of non-devotees, even when such casual devotees offer him the best of prayers. Text 41. It is the opinion of expert transcendentalists that the ultimate goal of performing all traditional good works, penances, sacrifices, charities, mystic activities, trances, etc., is to invoke my satisfaction. Purport. There are many traditionally pious activities in human society, such as altruism, philanthropy, nationalism, internationalism, charity, sacrifice, penance, and even meditation and trance, and all of them can be fully beneficial only when they lead to the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The perfection of any activity, social, political, religious, or philanthropic, is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. This secret of success is known to the devotee of the Lord, as exemplified by Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. As a good non-violent man, Arjuna did not want to fight with his kinsman, but when he understood that Krishna wanted the fight and had arranged it at Kurukshetra, he gave up his own satisfaction and fought for the satisfaction of the Lord. That is the right decision for all intelligent men. One's only concern should be to satisfy the Lord by one's activities. If the Lord is satisfied by any action, whatever it may be, then it is successful. Otherwise, it is simply a waste of time. That is the standard of all sacrifice, penance, austerity, mystic trance, and other good and pious work. Text 42. I am the supersoul of every individual. I am the supreme director and the dearest. People are wrongly attached to the gross and subtle bodies, but they should be attached to me only. Purport. The Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, is the dearest in both the conditioned and liberated states. When a person does not know that the Lord is the only dearmost object, then he is in the conditioned state of life. And when one knows perfectly well that the Lord is the only dearmost object, he is considered to be liberated. There are degrees of knowing one's relationship with the Lord, depending on the degree of realization as to why the Supreme Lord is the dearmost object of every living being. The real reason is clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:7. Mamevamsa jiva loke jiva buddha sanatana. The living entities are eternally parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. The living entity is called the Atma, and the Lord is called the Paramatma. The living entity is called Brahman, and the Lord is called the Parabrahman, or the Parameshvara. Ishvara Parakrishna. The conditioned souls who do not have self-realization accept the material body as the dearmost. The idea of the dearmost is then spread all over the body, both concentrated and extended. The attachment for one's own body and its extensions, like children and relatives, is actually developed on the basis of the real living entity. As soon as the real living entity is out of the body, even the body of the most dear son is no longer attractive. Therefore, the living spark, or eternal part of the Supreme, is the real basis of affection, and not the body. Because the living entities are also parts of the whole living entity, that Supreme living entity is the factual basis of affection for all. One who has forgotten the basic principle of his love for everything has only flickering love because he is in Maya. The more one is affected by the principle of Maya, the more he is detached from the basic principle of love. One cannot factually love anything unless he is fully developed in the loving service of the Lord. In the present verse, First, stress is given to focusing love upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word kuryat is significant here. This means one must have it. It is just to stress that we must have more and more attachment to the principle of love. The influence of Maya is experienced by the part and parcel spiritual entity, but it cannot influence the supersoul, the Paramatma. The Mayavadi philosophers, accepting the influence of Maya on the living entity, want to become one with the Paramatma, but because they have no actual love for Paramatma, they remain ever entrapped by the influence of Maya and are unable to approach the vicinity of Paramatma. This inability is due to their lack of affection for the Paramatma. A rich miser does not know how to utilize his wealth, and therefore, in spite of his being very rich, his miserly behavior keeps him everlastingly a poor man. On the other hand, a person who knows how to utilize wealth can quickly become a rich man, even with a small credit balance. The eyes and the sun are very intimately related because without sunlight the eyes are unable to see, but the other parts of the body, being attached to the sun as a source of warmth, take more advantage of the sun than do the eyes. Without possessing affection for the sun, the eyes cannot bear the rays of the sun, or in other words, such eyes have no capacity to understand the utility of the sun's rays. Similarly, the empiric philosophers, despite their theoretical knowledge of Brahman, cannot utilize the mercy of the Supreme Brahman because they lack affection. So many impersonal philosophers remain everlastingly under the influence of Maya because although they indulge in theoretical knowledge of Brahman, they do not develop affection for Brahman, nor do they have any scope for development of affection because of their defective method. A devotee of the sun god, even though devoid of eyesight, can see the sun god as he is even from this planet, whereas one who is not a devotee of the sun cannot even bear the glaring sunlight. Similarly, by devotional service, even though one is not on the level of a jnani, one can see the personality of Godhead within himself due to his development of pure love. In all circumstances, one should try to develop love of Godhead, and that will solve all contending problems. Text 43. By following my instructions, you can now generate the living entities as before by dint of your complete Vedic wisdom and the body you have directly received from me, the supreme cause of everything. Text 44. The sage Maitreya said, after instructing Brahma, the creator of the universe, to expand, the primeval Lord, the personality of Godhead, in his personal form as Narayana, disappeared. Purport. Before his activity in creating the universe, Brahma saw the Lord, that is, the explanation of the Chatusloki Bhagavatam. When the creation awaited Brahma's activity, Brahma saw the Lord, and therefore the Lord existed in his personal form before the creation. His eternal form is not created by the attempt of Brahma, as imagined by less intelligent men. The personality of Godhead appeared as he is before Brahma, and he disappeared from him in the same form, which is not materially tinged. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta Purports of the 3rd Canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy. Chapter 10. Divisions of the Creation. Text 1. Sri Vidura said, O great sage, please let me know how Brahma, the grandfather of the planetary inhabitants, created the bodies of the living entities from his own body and mind after the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 2. O greatly learned one, kindly eradicate all my doubts, and let me know all of that I have inquired from you from the beginning to the end. Purport. Vidura asked all relevant questions of Maitreya because he knew well that Maitreya was the right person to reply to all the points of his inquiries. One must be confident about the qualifications of his teacher. One should not approach a layman for replies to specific spiritual inquiries. Such inquiries, when replied to with imaginative answers by the teacher, are a program for wasting time. Text 3. Sutta Goswami said, O son of Burgu, the great sage Maitreya Muni, thus hearing from Vidura, felt very much enlivened. Everything was in his heart, and thus he began to reply to the questions one after another. Purport. The phrase Sutta Uvacha, Sutta Goswami said, appears to indicate a break in the discourse between Maharaja Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami. While Sukadeva Goswami was speaking to Maharaja Parikshit, Sutta Goswami was only one member of a large audience, but Sutta Goswami was speaking to the sages of Namisaranya, headed by the sage Sanaka, a descendant of Sukadeva Goswami. This, however, does not make any substantial differences in the topics under discussion. Text 4. The greatly learned sage Maitreya said, O Vidura, Brahma thus engaged himself in penances for 100 celestial years, as advised by the personality of Godhead, and applied himself in devotional service to the Lord. Purport. That Brahma engaged himself for the personality of Godhead Narayana means that he engaged himself in the service of the Lord. That is the highest penance one can perform for any number of years. There is no retirement from such service, which is eternal and ever encouraging. Text 5. Thereafter Brahma saw that both the lotus on which he was situated and the water on which the lotus was growing were trembling due to a strong violent wind. Purport. The material world is called illusory because it is a place of forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. Thus, one engaged in the Lord's devotional service in the material world may sometimes be very much disturbed by awkward circumstances. There is a declaration of war between the two parties, the illusory energy and the devotee, and sometimes the weak devotees fall victim to the onslaught of the powerful illusory energy. Lord Brahma, however, was sufficiently strong by the causeless mercy of the Lord, and he could not be victimized by the material energy, although it gave him cause for anxiety when it managed to totter the existence of his position. Text 6. Long penance and transcendental knowledge of self-realization had matured Brahma in practical knowledge, and thus he drank the wind completely along with the water. Purport. Lord Brahma's struggle for existence is a personal example of the continued fight between the living entities in the material world and the illusory energy called Maya. Beginning from Brahma down to this age, the living entities are struggling with the forces of material nature. By advanced knowledge in science and transcendental realization, one can try to control the material energy, which works against our endeavors, and in the modern age, advanced material scientific knowledge and penance have played very wonderful roles in controlling the powers of the material energy. Such control of the material energy, however, can be most successfully carried out if one is a soul surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and carries out his order in the spirit of loving transcendental service. Text 7. Thereafter he saw that the lotus on which he was situated was spread throughout the universe, and he contemplated how to create all the planets which were previously merged in that very same lotus. Purport. The seeds of all the planets in the universe were impregnated in the lotus on which Brahma was situated. All the planets were already generated by the Lord, and all the living entities were also born in Brahma. The material world and the living entities were all already generated in seeding forms by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The seeds of all planets in the universe were impregnated in the lotus on which Brahma was situated. All the planets were already generated by the Lord, and all the living entities were also born in Brahma. The material world and the living entities were all already generated in seedling forms by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Brahma was to disseminate the same seedlings all over the universe. The real creation is therefore called Sharga, and later on the manifestation by Brahma is called Visharga. Text 8. Thus, engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma entered into the whorl of the lotus, and as it spread all over the universe, he divided it into 3 divisions of worlds, and later into 14 divisions. Text 9. Lord Brahma is the most exalted personality in the universe because of his causeless devotional service unto the Lord in mature transcendental knowledge. He therefore created all the 14 planetary divisions for inhabitation by the different types of living entities. Purport. The Supreme Lord is the reservoir of all the qualities of the living entities. The conditioned souls in the material world reflect only part of those qualities, and therefore they are sometimes called pratibimbas. These pratibimba living entities, as parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, have inherited different proportions of his original qualities, and in terms of their inheritance of these qualities, they appear as different species of life, and are accommodated in different planets according to the plan of Brahma. Brahma is the creator of the three worlds, namely the lower planets called the Patalalokas, the middle planets called the Burlokas, and the upper planets called the Svarlokas. Still much higher, such as Maharloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, and Brahmaloka, do not dissolve in the devastating water. This is because of the causeless devotional service rendered unto the Lord by their inhabitants, whose existence continues up to the end of Vipararda time, when they are generally liberated from the chain of birth and death in the material world. Text 10. Vidura inquired from Maitreya, O my lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail. Purport. The complete universe is a manifestation of varieties of entities, beginning from the atoms up to the gigantic universe itself, and all is under the control of the Supreme Lord in his form of Kala, or eternal time. The controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There is a time for atomic dissolution and a time for the universal dissolution. There is a time for the annihilation of the body of the human being, and there is a time for the annihilation of the universal body. Also, growth, development, and resultant actions all depend on the time factor. Vidura wanted to know in detail the different physical manifestations and their times of annihilation. Text 11. Maitreya said, Eternal time is the primeval source of the interactions of the three modes of material nature. It is unchangeable and limitless, and it works as the instrument of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pastimes in the material creation. Purport. The impersonal time factor is the background of the material manifestation as the instrument of the Supreme Lord. It is the ingredient of assistance offered to material nature. No one knows where time began and where it ends, and it is time only which can keep a record of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material manifestation. This time factor is the material cause of creation, and is therefore a self-expansion of the personality of Godhead. Time is considered the impersonal feature of the Lord. The time factor is also explained by modern men in various ways. Some accept it almost as it is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. For example, in Hebrew literature, time is accepted in the same spirit. As a representation of God, it is stated therein, God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets. Metaphysically, time is distinguished as absolute and real. Absolute time is continuous and is unaffected by the speed or slowness of material things. Time is astronomically and mathematically calculated in relation to the speed, change, and life of a particular object. Factually, however, time has nothing to do with the relativities of things. Rather, everything is shaped and calculated in terms of the facility offered by time. Time is the basic measurement of the activity of our senses, by which we calculate past, present, and future. But in factual calculation, time has no beginning and no end. Pandita Chanakya says that even a slight fraction of time cannot be purchased with millions of dollars, and therefore even a moment of time lost without profit must be calculated as the greatest loss in life. Time is not subject to any form of psychology, nor are the moments objective realities in themselves, but they are dependent on particular experiences. Therefore, Srila Jiva Goswami concludes that the time factor is intermixed with the activities, actions, and reactions of the external energy of the Lord. The external energy or material nature works under the superintendence of the time factor as the Lord himself, and that is why material nature appears to have produced so many wonderful things in the cosmic manifestation. Bhagavad Gita 9.10 confirms this conclusion as follows, Mayadhyakshana prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanina kauteya jagad vapiravartate. Text 12. This cosmic manifestation is separated from the Supreme Lord as material energy by means of Kala, which is the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Lord. It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord under the influence of the same material energy of Vishnu. Purport. As stated previously by Narada before Vyasadeva, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.20, Idam hi visvam bhagavan ivatara. This unmanifested world is the self-same personality of Godhead, but it appears to be something else beyond or besides the Lord. It appears so because of its being separated from the Lord by means of Kala. It is something like the tape-recorded voice of a person who is now separated from the voice. As the tape recording is situated on the tape, so the whole cosmic manifestation is situated on the material energy and appears separate by means of Kala. The material manifestation is therefore the objective manifestation of the Supreme Lord and exhibits his impersonal features so much adored by impersonalist philosophers. Text 13. This cosmic manifestation is as it is now. It was the same in the past, and it will continue in the same way in the future. Purport. There is a systematic schedule for the perpetual manifestation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material world, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.8. Bhuttagramam imam krishtanam avashram prakritur vasat. As it is created now, and as it will be destroyed later on, so also it existed in the past, and again will be created, maintained, and destroyed in due course of time. Therefore, the systematic activities of the time factor are perpetual and eternal, and cannot be stated to be false. The manifestation is temporary and occasional, but it is not false as claimed by the Mayavadi philosophers. Text 14. There are 9 different kinds of creations beside the one which naturally occurs due to the interactions of the modes. There are 3 kinds of annihilations due to eternal time, the material elements and the quality of one's work. Purport. The scheduled creations and annihilations take place in terms of the supreme will. There are other creations due to interactions of material elements, which take place by the intelligence of Brahma. Later these will be more explicitly explained. At present, only preliminary information is given. The 3 kinds of annihilations are 1. Due to the scheduled time of the annihilation of the entire universe. 2. Due to a fire which emanates from the mouth of Ananta, and 3. Due to one's qualitative actions and reactions. Text 15. Of the 9 creations, the first one is the creation of the Mahatattva, or the sum total of the material ingredients, wherein the modes interact due to the presence of the Supreme Lord. In the second, the false ego is generated, in which the material ingredients, material knowledge, and material activities arise. Purport. The first emanation from the Supreme Lord for material creation is called the Mahatattva. The interaction of the material modes is the cause of false identification, or the sense that a living being is made of material elements. This false ego is the cause of identifying the body and mind with the soul proper. Material resources and the capacity and knowledge to work are all generated in the second term of creation, after the Mahatattva. Jnana indicates the senses which are sources of knowledge and their controlling deities. Work entails the working organs and their controlling deities. All these are generated in the second creation. Text 16. The sense perceptions are created in the third creation, and from these the elements are generated. The fourth creation is the creation of knowledge and of working capacity. Text 17. The fifth creation is that of the controlling deities by the interaction of the modes of goodness, of which the mind is the sum total. The sixth creation is the ignorant darkness of the living entity, by which the master acts as a fool. Purport. The demigods in the higher planets are called devas because they are all devotees of Lord Vishnu. Vishnu Bhakta Smirto Daiva Asharas Tad Viparyaya. All the devotees of Lord Vishnu are devas or demigods, whereas all others are asharas. That is the division of the devas and the asharas. Devas are situated in the mode of goodness and material nature, whereas the asharas are situated in the modes of passion or ignorance. The demigods or controlling deities are entrusted with departmental management of all the different functions of the material world. For example, one of our sense organs, the eye, is controlled by light. Light is distributed by the sun rays, and their controlling deity is the sun. Similarly, mind is controlled by the moon. All other senses, both for working and for acquiring knowledge, are controlled by the different demigods. The demigods are assistants of the Lord in the management of material affairs. After the creation of the demigods, all entities are covered by the darkness of ignorance. Each and every living being in the material world is conditioned by his mentality of lording it over the resources of material nature. Although a living entity is the master of the material world, he is conditioned by ignorance, by the false impression of being the proprietor of material things. The energy of the Lord, called avidya, is the bewildering factor of the conditioned souls. The material nature is called avidya, or ignorance. But to the devotees of the Lord engaged in pure devotional service, this energy becomes vidya, or pure knowledge. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. The energy of the Lord transforms from Mahamaya to Yogamaya and appears to pure devotees in her real feature. The material nature therefore appears to function in three phases: as the creative principle of the material world, as ignorance, and as knowledge. As disclosed in the previous verse, in the fourth creation the power of knowledge is also created. The conditioned souls are not originally fools, but by the influence of the avidya function of material nature, they are made fools, and thus they are unable to utilize knowledge in the proper channel. By the influence of darkness, the conditioned soul forgets his relationship with the Supreme Lord and is overwhelmed by attachment, hatred, pride, ignorance, and false identification, the five kinds of illusion that cause material bondage. Text 18. All the above are natural creations by the external energy of the Lord. Now hear from me about the creations by Brahma, who is an incarnation of the mode of passion, and who, in the matter of creation, has a brain like that of the personality of Godhead. Text 19. The seventh creation is that of the immovable entities, which are of six kinds: the fruit trees without flowers, trees, and plants, which exist until the fruit is ripe, creepers, pipe plants, creepers which have no support, and trees with flowers and fruits. Text 20. All the immovable trees and plants seek their subsistence upwards. They are almost unconscious, but have feelings of pain within. They are manifested in variegatedness. Text 21. The eighth creation is that of the lower species of life, and they are of different varieties, numbering 28. They are all extensively foolish and ignorant. They know their desirables by smell, but are unable to remember anything within the heart. Purport. In the Vedas, the symptoms of the lower animals are described as follows. Lower animals have knowledge only of their hunger and thirst. They have no acquired knowledge, no vision. Their behavior exhibits no dependence on formalities. Extensively ignorant, they can know their desirables only by smell, and by such intelligence only can they understand what is favorable and unfavorable. Their knowledge is concerned only with eating and sleeping. Therefore, even the most ferocious lower animals, such as tigers, can be tamed simply by regularly supplying meals and accommodations for sleeping. Only snakes cannot be tamed by such an arrangement. Text 22. O purest Vidura, of the lower animals, the cow, goat, buffalo, Krishna stag, hog, Gavaya animal, deer, lamb, and camel all have 2 hooves. Text 23. The horse, mule, ass, gaura, saraba bison, and wild cow all have only 1 hoof. Now you may hear from me about the animals who have 5 nails. Text 24. The dog, jackal, tiger, fox, cat, rabbit, sajaru, lion, monkey, elephant, tortoise, alligator, gosapa, etc. all have 5 nails in their claws. They are known as panchanakas, or animals having 5 nails. Text 25. The heron, vulture, crane, hawk, basa, baluka, peacock, swan, sarasa, chakravaka, crow, owl, and others are the birds. Text 26. The creation of the human beings who are of one species only, and who stock their edibles in the belly, is the 9th in the rotation. In the human race, the mode of passion is very prominent. Humans are always busy in the midst of miserable life, but they think themselves happy in all respects. Purport. The human being is more passionate than the animals, and thus the sex life of the human being is more irregular. The animals have their due time for sexual intercourse, but the human being has no regular time for such activities. The human being is endowed with a higher, advanced stage of consciousness for getting relief from the existence of material miseries, but due to his ignorance, he thinks that his higher consciousness is meant for advancing in the material comforts of life. Thus his intelligence is misused in the animal propensities, eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, instead of spiritual realization. By advancing in material comforts, the human being puts himself into a more miserable condition, but illusioned by the material energy, he always thinks himself happy, even while in the midst of misery. Such misery of human life is distinct from the natural comfortable life enjoyed even by the animals. Text 27. O good Vidura, these last three creations and the creation of demigods, the 10th creation, are Vikrita creations, which are different from the previously described Prakrita, natural creations. The appearance of the Kumaras is both. Text 28 through 29. The creation of the demigods is of 8 varieties. 1. The demigods. 2. The forefathers. 3. The Asharas or demons. 4. The Gandharvas and Apsharas or angels. 5. The Yakshas and Rakshasas. 6. The Siddhas, Karanas and Vidyadharas. 7. The Bhutas, Pretas and Pisachas. And 8. The superhuman beings, celestial singers, etc. All are created by Brahma, the creator of the universe. Purport. As explained in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Siddhas are inhabitants of Siddhaloka, where the residents travel in space without vehicles. At their mere will they can pass from one planet to another without difficulty. Therefore, in the upper planets, the inhabitants are far superior to the inhabitants of this planet in all manners of art, culture, and science, since they possess brains superior to those of human beings. The spirits and jinn mentioned in this connection are also counted among the demigods, because they are able to perform uncommon functions not possible for men. Text 30. Now I shall describe the descendants of the Manus, the creator Brahma, as the incarnation of the passion mode of the personality of Godhead, creates the universal affairs with unfailing desires in every millennium by the force of the Lord's energy. Purport. The cosmic manifestation is an expansion of one of the many energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Creator and the created are both emanations of the same Supreme Truth, as stated in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Janmadi Asya Yata. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Divisions of the Creation.